Good day, masayang buhay sa inyong lahat. Welcome to the MELC 2 Week 2 of Science 8. And this week, we will be differentiating three concepts sa ating MELC 2. So, this week, we will be differentiating focus and epicenter, intensity and magnitude, and active and inactive faults. So, please panoorin natin ang video na ito hanggang matapos para ma-differentiate natin ang tatlong ito. So, before we start, let us first recall the concepts that we have learned last week. So, we discussed the fault and fault movements. So, what are the types of fault? So, una, normal fault. Normal fault happens when the hanging wall drops relative to the footwall. Last time, diniscuss natin na ang fault ay merong footwall at hanging wall. We learned that footwall ay isang stationary block ng fault. Samantalang ang hanging wall ay gumagalaw at is either bumababa, tumataas, or nag-i-slide. So, kapag ang hanging wall ay bumaba, that kind of fault is a normal fault. While kapag naman tumaas ang hanging wall, ito ay tinatawag natin na reverse fault. So, ang reverse fault happens when the hanging wall goes up relative to the footwall. So, kabaligtaran siya or it is the opposite of the normal fault. And the last one, ang blocks ay hindi bumababa or tumataas, but these blocks slide past each other. So, pag nag-slide ang mga lupa na ito, ang tawag dito ay strike slip fault. So, madali lamang tandaan kung anong uri ng fault ang gumalaw. So, kapag bumaba ang hanging wall, that's normal fault. Kapag tumaas, that's reverse fault. And kapag nag-slide, we call that as strike slip fault. So now, this is the most essential learning competency that we need to master. Differentiate the epicenter of an earthquake from its focus. 2. Intensity of an earthquake from its magnitude. And number 3, the active from inactive faults. The first concept that we will be discussing for this video is focus versus epicenter. So ano ba ang pagkakaiba ng focus at epicenter? Siguro pamilyar na tayo sa word na epicenter dahil kapag nagkakaroon ng lindol, maaaring malocate natin ang isang lindol sa pamamagitan ng kanyang epicenter. Pero ano nga ba talaga ang pagkakaiba ng focus at epicenter? The focus is the actual point of rock breakage or movement. The focus is usually located far below the surface of the earth, while epicenter is the point on the surface of the earth directly above the focus. So, anong pagkakaiba ng focus and epicenter? Ang focus is the site or the location where the rock breaks. So, ito yung lugar kung saan nagkakaroon ng paggalaw or displacement sa ilalim ng lupa. While epicenter is the point directly above the focus. So, ang focus nasa ilalim, ito ang location kung nasaan ang paggalaw ng lupa. At yung epicenter naman ay nasa ibabaw ng focus o nasa ground o nasa surface ng earth ang epicenter. So, halimbawa, pag sinabi sa balita na ang epicenter ng lindol ay, say for example, ay nasa Batangas, Ibig sabihin, yung epicenter na ito, nasa ilalim nito yung gumalaw na lupa o yung tipak ng lupa na gumalaw na nag-cause ng lindol. That is the focus. Halimbawa, ang isang example, isang analogy na ginagamit ko sa mga bata. Kapag nagkaroon ka ng balo o nabalian ka ng buto, so meron kang breakage, no, ng bone. So yung break ng bone nasa ilalim, which causes the swelling. Okay? So yung swelling na nasa surface, that would be your epicenter, and yung breakage, yung pagkaputol ng buto na nasa ilalim, that would be the focus. Now, habang lumalayo tayo sa epicenter, mas nababawasan yung effect ng lindol. And once we go closer sa epicenter, mas malakas ang effect ng lindol. Kaya kanina, pinakita ko sa inyo yung sirang windshield, parang ganun yung epicenter. So habang lumalayo doon sa pinaka gitna, mas kumokonti ang distraction. And same thing as epicenter. Once again, okay po, let us differentiate focus and epicenter. Focus is the place or the location where rock breaks, while the epicenter is the point directly above the focus. So, doon sa focus nagsisimula ang lindol, and then we try to locate the focus through epicenter. Now, the next concept would be intensity and magnitude. Maraming tao ang nalilito sa pagkakaiba ng intensity at magnitude. So, ano nga ba ang pagkakaiba nila when it comes to the earthquake? So, ano nga ba ang pagkakaiba at ano ang gamit ng intensity at ng magnitude para maunawaan natin ang epekto ng lindol? Now, let us look at this table for us to further differentiate magnitude and intensity. So, magnitude is the measurement of the size of an earthquake, while intensity is the measurement of how bad the shaking is in an earthquake. So what is the meaning of those definitions? Magnitude is the measurement of the energy released by an earthquake. So, ito yung sukat ng lakas ng lindol. Ito yung lakas ng enerhiya, specifically seismic wave, na inirelease ng lindol sa paggalaw ng focus o paggalaw ng lupa. While intensity po is the measurement of the distraction. Intensity is the measurement of the damage caused by an earthquake. So, intensity, minimeasure niya kung gaano naging makapanira yung lindol. Samantalang ang magnitude, ang minimeasure niya ay yung mismong enerhiya ni-release ng lupa nung gumalaw ito. So that is the concept that we need to understand. Magnitude and intensity. At marami pa silang pagkakaiba. So, how it is measured? Magnitude, measuring the greatest amplitude of the shear wave, how much fault has been displaced. Yun nga ang sabi ko kanina. While intensity is we measure how much damage has occurred and how much shaking people feel. So when we talk about how many buildings have collapsed, that is intensity. Pero when we say that the magnitude is it is the energy release somewhat equal to an atomic bomb. So that is a magnitude. Intensity is the effect. Okay? While magnitude is the energy. So we are using some scales. So in magnitude, we are using Richter scale. While in intensity, so we are using Roseforel. Pwede rin sometimes we are using modified Mercalli scale. What the instrument is based on? So maximum magnitude, maximum movement or displacement of the fault. And intensity, well, intensity is based on the extent and type of damage. So, the scales, sabi ko nga kanina, meron tayong Richter scale for magnitude, meron tayo, and while we have Roseforel and modified Mercalli para sa intensity. So, that is the difference. Look at this table. So, sabi nga natin kanina, gumagamit tayo ng Richter scale para sa magnitude while we are using Mercalli scale. Another one difference of magnitude and intensity. Intensity is usually written in Roman numeral. Okay? While magnitude is written in our normal pattern of Hindu-Arabic. Now, so if we try to read this table, say for example, intensity 1 usually has magnitude of 1 to 3. What would be the description? So, not felt except by few, very few, under special favorable conditions. So, intensity 2 and 3 is categorized as weak, which has magnitude 3 to 3.9. So, their descriptions are felt only by few persons at rest, especially on upper floors of buildings, and felt quite noticeably by persons indoors, especially on upper floors of buildings. Standing motor cars may rock slightly. Vibrations similar to the passing of truck. Durations estimated. So, ganun natin siya mas maiintindihan. Say, another example, baba tayo dito. Say for example, a magnitude 6 to 6.9 can be registered in Mercalli scale as intensity 8 to intensity 9. These are categorized as severe and violent earthquake. So, ano nangyayari sa magnitude? So, for example, magnitude 6.9. So, that is categorized as violent earthquake. So, ano nangyayari dyan? Damage considerable in specially designed structures. Damage great in substantial buildings with partial collapse. Buildings shifted off foundations. So, I really hope na intindihan natin kung anong pagkakaiba ng intensity and the magnitude. Itong mga description of damage na ito, this would be the intensity. Nasira yung building, may namatay, so may nasunugan, maraming nag-collapse na bahay. Those are measurement of distractions. While magnitude is the energy, is the measurement of energy released by the earthquake. So that is the difference between intensity and the magnitude. We will go now to the last concept that we will discuss in this video. The difference between active and inactive fault. Actually, meron pa siyang reactivated fault. Okay? So, later on, isama na lang din natin sa discussion. So, let us define active and inactive faults. So, active faults are structure along which we expect displacement to occur. Since a shallow earthquake is a process that produces displacement across a fault, All shallow earthquakes occur on active faults, while inactive faults are structures that can be identified but which do not have earthquake. So what is the meaning of this? So sa madaling salita, in other words, active faults, these are faults that has the capacity to produce earthquake, or these faults have the capacity of displacement. Ibig sabihin, may kakayahan silang gumalaw sooner or later. While inactive faults, these are former active faults na hindi na gumalaw. Pwede natin silang makita as crack, pero they do not have the capacity to move. So, ganito, there is so-called reactivated fault. When this inactive fault suddenly displays, so magkakaroon tayo ng tinatawag na reactivated fault. So, reactivated fault. So, from active status to inactive status, and then from inactive status, it will go back, this fault will go back to active status ulit. So, magiging active fault ulit siya dahil gumalaw siya. So, that is reactivated fault. So, madali lang i-differentiate. Active fault has the capacity to displace or to move or to produce earthquake sooner or later, while inactive fault, mga bata, ito ay recognizable, kaya nating ma-identify yung crack or yung fault dati, pero pero itong fault na ito ay wala nang kakayahang mag-produce ng earthquake. That is inactive fault. But sooner or later, pwede ulit siyang maging active at maging reactivated fault. So that is the difference between active and inactive fault. Sana naintindihan natin. And now, to generalize our discussion for today, for this week, we discussed focus and epicenter. We learned that focus is the point or the location under the ground that causes an earthquake, or it is the point where rock breaks, while epicenter is the point directly above the focus. While intensity is the measurement of the destruction of an earthquake, while magnitude is the measurement of the energy released by an earthquake. And the last thing is active and inactive. Active is a fault that has the capacity to move or to displace, while inactive fault is recognizable fault but has no capacity to produce earthquake. Sana po naintindihan natin for this week yung mga concepts na kailangan nating malaman. Thank you very much, guys. I hope that you learned something today. Thank you very much and God bless. See you on our next video for week number 3.